Hey, welcome into Next Level Podcast. I'm Nick Tate, and today we got a special guest. We have La'jerrick Taylor. How you doing today, bud?
What's up, bud?
Hey, I truly appreciate you coming in today. I know we've been meaning to get together. I really want to talk about a lot of mental health issues that's been going on. It seems to be a really big epidemic today, and I think you have a lot of insight on that.
I've had a lot of experience with it personally, and in regards to education as well. I just completed my master's in marriage and family therapy, where it talks about the psychoanalytical aspects of the family system and how certain mental illnesses as well as other predispositions are passed down through generations, and ultimately, an opportunity. I've had the opportunity to put in place a situation where I teach people how to change those patterns and things like that from happening.
Okay. Has it been self-fulfilling?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. In a sense, when you really talk to people, a lot of people talk about this, but they don't know exactly the formal labels that they're talking about. Okay. You know? In our world, we hear intergenerational curses and stuff like that. Well, we hear generational curses and things like that. And what I found so ironic about it is like, it does have an actual evidence-based empirical backing of how, for instance, in the terms I use is like in regards to emotional processes, basically how the family's emotional system is constructed generations prior. And in a sense, it's almost like the family presenting today was in a sense established 50 to 100 years ago.
Sounds pretty biblical. If you ever, when you read the Bible and stuff like that, it talks a lot about, the sins of the father. Mm-hmm. So it kind of sounds similar to that, as if where you're carrying it down generations later that you can't get away from.
Yeah.
Let's start off with one subject I want to talk about, and then we're going to move into a lot of things about what you have going on in your life. But today, one of the things I think plays a very, very big role on mental illness is social media. And that's one of the things we have going on right now. Right now, they have a case where an individual was awarded $6 million for addiction to social media over in Australia. And I personally believe that social media can become an addiction. And on top of that, it plays a lot of mental health games on our younger youth today because of the dopamine that it gives you through TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, stuff like that. How do you feel about the direction social media is going and how it has driven our children and the youth of today to these areas of depression, and like there's even bullying online, all that?
Mm-hmm. I feel like, especially when you come up with new inventions or new interests or whatever, in regards to things that safeguard the most vulnerable, I feel like the safeguarding gets put on the back burner, a lot of things are more reactive than proactive, Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think we had this conversation about the capitalist mentality, but, when most things like I feel like in our nation where we live in, everything is more profit driven, and then the rest comes after.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly true.
All right, let's load this cart up with as much bread as possible, and then we'll focus on, how much the cart is messing up the road. We'll deal with that later.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Right now, let's make as much money as possible, and then when the problems come, we'll deal with that eventually. And I definitely feel like the kids are exposed to a lot, in regards to emotions and things like that. Like, in my world, like I got a 10-year-old kid. When you experience emotions but don't have the words for them, it's almost like someone suffocating you, or putting a pillow over your face because you're feeling something, but you have no idea how to communicate it because you hadn't matured and been taught how to do that, you know?
A lot of people today, even today as they grow, even in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, don't know how to communicate the way they feel.
Exactly. You know, so when you put that in the realm of kids, and kids are kids for different reasons, you know. I've been listening to this guy named Chase Hughes, and he talks about, he's like a people reader, and he talks about, you know, how everyone wears a mask, you know, and that, you know, and everybody's dealing with hardship, you know. So when you add that to social media almost enhances that mask, you know, because it offers you an opportunity to show people just exactly what you want them to know. And if you are motivated by how you appeal to others, that's what you're going to feed into. How can I do that better? You know, and it's like, you can't be the master of all things. And I always talk about in therapy, like, put it simply, when you overload this side, something else is showing. And if you can reveal what's showing, you can almost establish just exactly who's that kid inside that person, or who's that vulnerable aspect inside that person that they're trying very hard to hide, you know? Like I was just making a joke with one of my buddies at training, and he said that I said, yeah, you know, I met this guy and I offered to help him. He was like, no, I got it, you know? And I was like, I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out who he was, you know, and I went to his Facebook page, and I was hoping for some big muscle bound, showing his muscles and all this other stuff. But he was in an image with his wife, you know? And I said, that guy might can whoop my,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
There's one thing you go to a photo and you look at a guy and he's showing you exactly what he wants you to see. His muscles, his real shredded bod, lifting up heavy weights, you know? Mm-hmm. You can automatically, well, I'm not gonna say automatically assume, but you can almost assume this is more of an ego-driven type of guy. You know, I want people to see only what I want them to see. But I was like, dude, if I'd have came to your page and you were like planting flowers, I definitely wouldn't deal with you. You're like, what do you mean? I was like, bro, no. If you look that jacked and you planting flowers, that means you got your stuff together.
That's it.
You know, you found peace.
That's a warrior in a garden.
Yeah. I was like, no, I'm definitely not messing with that guy. You know,
I got you. Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of what you just said, because social media started, just like you said, with Mark Zuckerberg and a bunch of other individuals, as a new invention. And reactively, you know, right now, that's kind of the stage I feel like society's in. But one of the things that I was thinking about then while you were speaking is about the way that social media is set up today is through algorithms. So as you look at things you're interested in, it creates an algorithm to where it shows you more of that. Just like you would if you were on some kind of a drug like cocaine or marijuana or anything like that. The drug dealer keeps giving you more and more and more. Instead of expanding into a broader realm of information, it focuses on that minute thing of what you're into, especially TikTok. If you watch TikTok a lot, you'll see that you stay on one page too long, you'll see another page just like it. You'll see another creator just like it. And that's what feeds the children. And it's created a lot of social anxiety issues because between the filters and people you don't even know that have a different lifestyle, but what they present, just like you said they show you what they want you to see. It creates expectations for these kids that aren't real. Mm-hmm. And even in the idea that some of these children that are impoverished, it gives them a sense of hopelessness. Yeah. And, man, it's just something we're going to have to change throughout society, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And it has to be done firstly in the homes, you know? With my kids, I spend a lot of time questioning them, you know? I don't like the I don't know responses.
Yeah.
You know, son, why did you do that?
I need an answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, sit down. Let's go through it. We're gonna figure out how did you get
here.
We're
slow to process.
Yeah, I got you. You know, and I line things out for them. You know, In today's society, bro, like our kids are like so emotionally absent, like they don't have the words for what they're feeling, like literally, I talk to my kids all the time. And, for instance, my two kids' grandmother was shot down in Ball. And it occurred to me that, I spent so much of my life trying to protect them that my kids had never been to a funeral. My baby boy, he's just born empathetic. You know what I'm saying? He got that from me. But my oldest son, if I don't recognize the emotion and put a label to it for him, he just ignore it.
He don't know how to process it.
Yeah, so, the day of the funeral, I said, son, we got to get ready to go. He's like, where are we going? So we're going to your grandma's funeral. Oh. So he gets up, he gets dressed. And while I'm sitting there in the funeral, and it's just tragic, I'm watching, all the sorrow faces and emotional faces. And I watched my son break down. And a part of me wanted to go over and console him. But a part of me says he needs to experience this emotion. And I'm sitting there and I feel like I was teaching him something by not consoling him and letting him explore this emotion and what this loss meant to him, because he hadn't had the opportunity to, So when you think about the internet and you think about these unexplained emotions that you hadn't explained and the internet's explaining it to him, imagine how catastrophic that could be.
Especially with a lot of false information.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 100%.
Because what you see on the internet, again, is what other people want you to see. And, if it's information that's bad, because a lot of it is deceitful.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, if they can't process it, it's terrible. It's broken down communication terribly. Like people don't sit around and talk anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great idea what you're talking about, allowing him to figure it out.
Yeah. It's almost like the training, we do. We go into a house type setting and we clearing rooms or whatever it may be. It's in a controlled environment.
Right.
You're able to outroll real quick if it gets too hazy,
You're allowed to make mistakes and still pick yourself back up.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Real life, you can't respawn.
No, you can't. So you want to sit them in a world unprepared, and then something happens and then they don't know how to respond to it. Like I tell you what, we'll go the racial route,
Okay.
I always make fun of my white buddies or whatever. And I tell them things like,
you have white friends?
I have a lot of white friends.
Oh my goodness.
And I'll tell them, I'll be like, bro, y'all keep sending y'all little white kids to all them private white schools. What they gonna do when they get to college to their first black person?
Oh, that's terrible.
But the truth behind it is, I know we're gonna talk about the program later, but the thing about my program is I wanted to unite people from all socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yeah.
To give them exposure to those that they wouldn't commonly meet on a daily basis. And not so much just because their mom or their dad believe a certain thing, but tax bracket separates people.
It does.
Know what I'm saying?
It does.
And you don't necessarily understand how you have it on the other side of the coin. And it's not, I never really believed that it was, that the issues were more race based. I almost feel like it was always, SES tape based,
economic based.
Exactly. In our world, we call it, we talk about, I think it's like the ecological aspect. I forgot his name, Brian Frunenberger or something like that. But, he talks about people's ecosystems. And, you had the the exosystem, microsystem, some other ones. And it describes your family, it describes your school, it describes your community, it describes the type of employment that you get opportunity to. And sometimes when I talk to certain people, maybe, ex-cons or something like that, I talk about how their ecosystem was closer to failure than others. And then I understand what I mean. So when you look at certain ecosystems have more get out of jail free cards than others.
And bigger support systems.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the whole thing.
You know, in a more impoverished area, you may not have a mother, you may not have a father, you may not have both. You may be being raised by grandma. You don't, be raised on government assistance, stuff like that. And financially, and not only does it hurt, but a lot of people make it day to day doing the bad things because that's all they know.
Exactly.
There's no one there to point out, hey, don't do this, don't do that. But for them, the easiest hustle is what's in front of them. And a lot of times in that neighborhood, it may not be the right thing.
And also, if you look at like the harsher ecosystem, a lot of things, a lot of their motives and actions are more so driven by survival, not so much as like goals and thinking outside the box. It's
I got to get a meal tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because I haven't had a meal today.
Exactly. But you want me to focus on college in 10 years? That's difficult, and it somewhat creates like a glass ceiling, in my little neighborhood down in Gina, I talk to kids all the time, and it's a roadmap, it's a roadmap to reach heights that are different than the normal pathways that they're familiar with. Down there is school and graduate from school in the oil field. That's it. That's all they think about.
They're limited.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, jail's here, law enforcement. Then you got a federal prison somewhere close, law enforcement. You're talking about a 3-year plan where you're getting close to about 70 grand, before you even hit 23 years old. And I'm like, why is that not clicking? They don't
have the exposure. They don't have someone experience like standing there. If you ever, I don't know if you had this when I was growing up, like at my school, I didn't go to private school or nothing like that, but they would have, closer to your senior year, they would have people come and talk from the military, from certain businesses, stuff like that. And maybe that's kind of the direction you're trying to explain.
I mean, like in my school, we had that too. But like I always think about the missing areas of my decisions I've made in my life. When I was a kid, my motivations to go to school, to make good grades, was to play football. And that's as far as I went.
Yeah.
I didn't think about anything after that. I got to make good grades so I could play football.
That sounds like my kid.
Yeah. I didn't think nothing else, I'm going to go to the NFL, I'm going to do the combine. I'm going to come in every night. I'm going to read my playbook. There was nothing outside of that I thought about.
That was your dream.
That was it. And, like I come from a rough place, and I found out that, I like to do violence. I don't have any other words for it. And when I found out I like to do violence, I said, I want to get better at doing violence. And keep in mind, when I say do violence, it was when I found out I like violence was when I played football for the first time.
Right.
And I said, I
sack somebody.
Yeah. I was like, I loved it. I like dominating. I love being stronger, being faster.
Standing over them.
Yeah. And so I was like, I want to get better at doing violence, And one thing, I was like, how do I do it? And then I started solving that problem. And I said, okay. And about freshman year in high school, I said, okay, you got 3 more years of this. What are you going to do? How can you play more football? I got to go to college. How do I go to college? You got to take the ACT? Okay. You got to do a clearinghouse? Okay. You got to enroll in college prep classes? Okay. And you got to make good grades. Boom, I go do all that. Now I'm in college, And I played football. I don't know if I thought I was going to play football forever, but around my junior year, it was like, hey, you hadn't decided on a major yet.
Just taking classes.
Yeah.
English, math, and science.
Yeah.
Got it over with.
He was like, I was like, well, what am I closest to? He was like, well, you need so many hours to get a business degree. I do that. That was it. That's all I determined.
That's how it goes.
That's all I determined it, things took its course or whatever, and I ended up at the VA, and I got a good job and things like that. But in regards to planning my life, I never thought about planning my life. I never thought about marriage. I never thought about kids. The only thing I thought about was football.
Yeah.
You know? And if you would have told me a long time ago that, football wasn't going to be where you land, I'd have been dumbfounded. I don't know I don't know where my thought process would have been, But the bottom line was I knew I had a problem. Each time I ran into a new issue, I went into problem solving mode. Okay, this is where I want to get. How, what's the first threshold I need to cross, to get there? And how do I need to do that? But, I didn't have these conversations with my parents. What are you going to do when you grow up? I don't think I ever talked to my parents about that, I never thought about it, So you think about when, just thinking about ecosystem and the future ecosystems and how you want to set things up, bro. Like, it takes a lot on the parent side, and it's not so much as just what you're doing, but the communication aspect. How much insight are you not providing them, but making them interact with,
Right. Exactly. Experiencing them.
Exactly. How much are you allowing them to experience, and what we don't know or don't see as parents is like, we see things happening in a way that tells us if we're doing good parenting, you know what I'm saying? But, like, the way that your kids look at you is not the way that you look at you,
Right. You're a superhero to them.
Yeah, my son, I thought about my son, man, and I said, man, there must be so much pressure on my son. Here's your dad. And I did an MMA fight, 36 years old. I never lost a fight before. I went and got a master's degree. I started a gym. I've been working with the community since 2016. And I'm like, dude, that's a lot, And here he is trying to make his own place, his own way in this world. And he has this dad that looks like he's,
Yeah.
And it's to the point that when we start talking about girls and virginity and stuff like that, he looks at me as if like I'm godly, like I'm not the person to talk to about these things, and like the first part of me wants to get upset because I'm like, how do you feel you're not, you can't come to me with things like this? And then I look at myself, I'm like, dude, because you made him like that. You carry yourself a certain way around your kid, he doesn't know who you really are. He knows you as dad. In that role, in that form, So can you blame him for not knowing that he can talk to you about things like that?
No, I agree with you.
And, that's one thing I told my wife, like, I would like to go to family therapy,
Therapy, and believe it or not, therapy helps out a lot.
And
if you got somebody that they can just take a different point of view and help break down things that you may not see.
Yeah. They call that.
You can learn a lot.
Yeah, exactly. They call that second order cybernetics in our world. Basically, when you bring a third person in and they pretty much put your life in order for you, But my thing is like, and I always tell my wife, I just hate the fact, like, as a therapist, bro, you can't look at your entire system and put things in order. You know what I'm saying? You just can't because you're too close to it. I'm like, that sucks because I would want to, And like, for me, it makes me curious because if I could see on paper exactly what my family system is, it'll give me an idea of where we're headed, because it's almost like a movie. You get a casting role or whatever, and they give you the script, right?
Yeah.
And you read the script and you know how the movie starts, you know how the movie ends. Well, if you can understand your family system, the family system becomes a script. And you can understand, like, if you keep going this direction and this path, this pattern, this is what's going to happen. This is where it ends. You think about life as a movie. This is the movie. How do you think this movie ends?
Right.
But my wife I think too much.
No, that's definitely not it. But the reason I brought you in today, and I want to tell all of our viewers, is a lot of people have a lot of insight on things in life. And Mr. Taylor here, LJ, he has inspired me in so many ways because of what he does for his community. Like he's saying, the environments of the world, they shape the children that we have. And LJ here, he plays a really big role in it. And if you can, go ahead and tell us about some of your programs that you volunteer all your time for.
Okay. Well, I give you a bit of the origin. So as a kid, I was really troubled, and I was self-harming. I was suicidal. I had a lot of confusion. One of the things was I didn't know who my father was. I still don't know who my father is. And it made me angry, not the cool type of angry where a kid comes up and says they have anger issues. No, I'm talking about a 9-year-old missing a shot and punching a dent in a car,
Right.
And I was real hard on myself, because I felt like, it was a certain way I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be known. I didn't want to be seen as a weakling and all this other stuff that my earlier ordeals ran into that caused me to feel or believe or think a certain way. And along the way, I probably met 3 different individuals, and they stand out in my mind. The first guy was this guy named Kenny Brown in my neighborhood. And Kenny Brown was the it guy in our neighborhood. He was an athlete. He was, if he couldn't do it, nobody else was going to get it done. He was humble. He was smart. He was a handsome guy, And I remember one day, this was when I used to lose and cry and all this other stuff. He sat out one day with me. We had a basketball court and a crate on a pole. And we called it basically the big basketball court, but basically it was just the end of a street. But only the big kids played on that goal. And one day, he came out and he was shooting basketball by himself in the middle of the day. And I come out there and he wanted me to dunk the basketball goal. And he was the first person that ever literally stayed there and wanted to see me accomplish a task. And the fact that I couldn't do it, it just made me feel so bad, because it's like he's here, the guy, sacrificing his time for me, and I still can't get it done, And that drove me to want to get things done even more, And so later on, I met my grandma, not later on, but my grandma was always there. And my uncle told me stories about my grandma, how she always reached out to the kids in the neighborhood. She raised the neighborhood, is what he would say. So when I had my kids and I sat in the house and I thought about the community, and I said, man, the community was drug ridden. There was a lot of guys that had been arrested for, selling drugs and using drugs and things like that, like a whole generation of guys. And I said, I don't want that for my kids, Like, I want my kids to be raised in a community that's loving, that's nurturing and things like that.
You didn't want your kids to grow up in an environment that supported that.
Mm-hmm.
So you made moves so that your children wouldn't be in the situation you were growing up.
I said, well, that's the case. I raised the neighborhood. So the first thing I did.
You're kind of doing that today.
Yeah. The first thing I did was I took a tire and I go outside and there was some kids across the street. And I just asked them if they wanted to do a workout. And they came over and they started doing the workout. And then a few days later, there's more kids show up at my door. And then more kids. And then I took them to the park and even more kids came, These are kids riding bicycles 4 and 5 miles to come to the park to get beat up by me. Well, not physically beat up, but just, boot camp type work, MMA type work,
Way better than sitting in your room playing on your cell phone 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and it was hot, man. And I said, man, the other person that helped me out a lot when I was a kid was my Uncle Roger. And my Uncle Roger was a military guy. And I loved it when he came home because, I was with my grandma a majority of the time. And I didn't have that father figure to, this is what men do type stuff, But my Uncle Roger would come and he'd take us to go mow yards and stuff like that. And like, this is one job that I tell people about that, he gave me and my cousin a flathead screwdriver and a hammer and told us to go in the bathroom and chisels of dirt from in between the tile. Okay. It wasn't big tile. It was like those little puzzle piece tiles.
Mm-hmm.
And I approached that situation like, I'm gonna show him, you know, like I'm gonna make sure it's no dirt. I'm chiseling. And my cousin was like, man, I'm not doing this, you know?
Yeah.
But to me, it was a challenge, you know, because I feel like he was, whatever that was, I didn't know it was manhood. I didn't know it was responsibility. I didn't know what that was, but I knew whatever it was, he tasked me with doing it.
You wanted to complete it.
And I wanted to complete it. And so for me, you know, when I saw those kids arriving, you know, it warrants a question, you know, are kids looking for a worthy person to respect and follow? Or are kids hungry for some type of structure? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it is, you know, it's universal. You know? All kids are looking for this, whatever it is, whether it's, like I said, a person worth their respect, that they can follow, that they can trust, or a type of structure that they know is going to be there despite whatever's happening around, you know, like my little gym. If the gym is going to be, it's going to be there, you know. I know when I come here, this is how I'm going to feel when I leave, you know. So whether it was one of those two things, I held on to that. And it's proven effective each time that I've implemented it, you know. I think one of the more exciting and thrilling things that happened for me is in Gina, the football team went to the state championship. Well, if you go back about 7 years, you'll see that a majority of those guys were on our little Pee Wee League football team, you know, and we trained all the time, and these guys were still tight, still cool. And they went throughout junior high undefeated and went to high school and went to the state championship, you know? And for me, that just confirms a lot of things that I believe now, you know? That, you know, the origin story makes a huge difference on where things end up and how they result, you know? Mm-hmm. And in order to prepare for a better future, you got to also plan for tomorrow as well, you know? So you can't just look down the line and say someday somebody's going to go to a state championship game. You have to say, like, you know, as you stand there and you look at your 6-year-old kid and you think, okay, I just got to raise the neighborhood, you know, like you have to get that. You got to somehow reach that concept that don't expect other people to do the thing that you know that needs to be done when you have the abilities, the capabilities to make it happen yourself, you know. Don't always be pointing for somebody. One of y'all need to step up and do something, you know, when you have the ability to do it yourself, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest thing that I've came across with my program is that you put this energy in these kids, right? And I get to be Kenny to a lot of kids, you know. And if one thing they can say when they get older is they had one person that pushed them, you know, to be better than they are, you know. And if they succeed with it, great. You know what I'm saying? Some things happen and don't, it's still great, you know, but just know that you had an opportunity to be with someone who was going to push you to be beyond what you think you're capable of being. And whatever you get from that, you keep that feeling. Because if you ever settle for less, you still have that to fall back on, you know. Somebody believed in me. I pushed myself and I reached another level. There's no way I'm going backwards, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the mindset behind the program. But
I agree with everything you just said, you know, and to further add to it, what you were kind of broadly speaking about is children finding somebody to inspire them. And it's not just children. Grown men today still look for someone to inspire them, or like you are, be the person who inspires the rest of the community. And if it isn't someone, you can't find that individual that you want to be like, or point you in the right direction of who you may want to be as a person. You want to find the environment that can give you what you need. Mm. And I think a lot of that is where the struggle begins, is there's not a lot of people out there like you and there's a lot of bad environments.
Yeah.
You know, and that creates mental health issues going along the way, and just like you said, with no one teaching you how to communicate how you feel, how to process how you feel, with all the influences, again, going back to social media, your local environments, and you're a product of that regardless. You do have an option. Children, you could put two children in the same environment. It could either be rich or poor. It matters none. It matters none. But you can put two kids, same environment. They're in a poor environment. And there's a possibility if everything's exactly the same, one will succeed and one won't. And a lot of it is by choice. Mm-hmm. One's going to say, you know what, that's too much energy for me. Mm-hmm. Same story you had in the bathroom. Oh, man, I ain't doing that. Yeah. Where the other guy's like, you know what, challenge accepted. And then they get out of those impoverished areas and they become more successful. Mm-hmm. But I agree, influence carries it a lot further, because if you're in an environment that can point you in the right direction and show you that even though you don't care, that you should. And the same thing with the football team. You know, one day a team will show up that will get us there versus, hey kids, let me show you what discipline gets you to. Mm-hmm. You know, what a great work ethic brings you in the end, you know, how the results pay out. Yeah. And if you could show kids that, or show anybody, even individuals, that a lot of times that'll be the factor that changes their mind. Yeah. You know, and it's very sad that a lot of people don't have that opportunity. But I also wanted to bring awareness to a lot of things. And suicide is a very big issue. We've all been through it. I think everybody goes through it at some point in their life. And the stories, you know, we're not experts in any of this per se. You know, everybody has the knowledge of what goes on, but just more about awareness. Because throughout life, it doesn't matter how good you have it. It doesn't matter what environment you come from. But in bad environments, you may have this more often than not, where the struggle kind of gets to you. And then there's moments of hopelessness and a lot of bad decisions happen. And I know that's one of the things I asked you here today for, is to kind of tell that story. Because I was there when I seen you come into work that day, right after things happened, and you were going through a lot of trouble because there was a lot to process for you. Yeah. Well, in 2023, my brother committed suicide. He took a chain and he wrapped it around one of the crossbars on the porch, and he hung himself. I got the phone call. And even to this day, it's still triggering, getting a phone call at my job, because the only people that contact me a certain way is the people that don't call my job often. So I get a call from front lobby or something like that, someone that doesn't call, and that's the thing about trauma and PTSD, is you remember certain things and they trigger you every time they happen. So I get the phone call, and, my mom, she's on the phone. She tells me, Vinquel killed herself. And my mom, my mom doesn't cry, and I heard a voice crackle. That was the first thing. I didn't hear the words that came out of her mouth, but I noticed her crying. And I said, my mom don't cry over just for nothing. And it already brought you to that level of what heightened, like, danger. Yeah. So, you go through a process of elimination. And you think, who's this close to me and her? She's already said what happened. But I'm slowly processing, like, who is this close to me and her that could cause this emotion in her? And then it dawned on me. She said my brother's name. I said, nah, I just got to get there. If I get there, he'll be okay. You think you can fix it? I said, he'll be okay. So I got up. I took off running. And we got to the doors. I couldn't get through the doors. And trying to get through the door. The door finally opened. And it just hit me again,
he's dead. And I took stuff and started slamming it. I run out the front door. I get in the truck and I'm over 110 miles per hour, down 165. And I'm just thinking, I just got to get there. If I get there,
we can fix it.
It's going to be okay. I just got to get there before he goes, and I'm driving, but it just seemed like the truck's not going nowhere. And at one point, I stopped in the middle of the highway, and I get out the truck, and I'm gasping for air. In the middle of the highway. I'm like in between Harrisonburg and Reinhardt, and I'm just grasping for air, Like reality is not happening right now. A truck could come over the hill, crash, nothing's. And my mom pulls up, and my wife, carries me, put me in the truck, and we drive on up there, and I get there, and we at the hospital, and I'm at the hospital because I'm like, I didn't hear something. Maybe he's okay, And it's like, where is he? And it's like, the coroner has him. I'm like, no, the coroner can't have him. I got to see him. I got to be there. I got to let him know that I'm here and it's cool. It's okay. And I go in there, and it was my other brother. He had nicked the artery. When he found my brother, he punched the window out and he nicked the artery, and he bled out on the porch. And he tells me to come here, and I come to him, and he whispers. He said he did it with a chain. And I just started destroying the hospital. And my mom told me to calm down, and I walked outside, and I said, I got to go to the scene, And I started thinking about things like when my grandma passed away in 2010, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me because, I never lost anyone that close to me, As long as I had my grandma, as long as I had Medea, I was all right. And Medea died. She died a week before I graduated college. My mom was gone. She was incarcerated at the time. So I didn't know if anybody was going to come to my graduation. My Uncle Roger did. And he brought his family. But after that, it was weird because I wasn't Irene's grandson anymore, and I wasn't Palomina's oldest son anymore. I was just LJ. I didn't know how to deal with that. And for a while, I kept calling my grandma's phone number. It took me about 3 months to stop calling. They disconnected it. But I would call every night because she called me every night, So I knew then it was things I needed to see to calm my soul, calm my spirit. And so I went out there. And I retracked all his steps. I can literally see his foot imprints in the grass going around to the tank. I followed his tank. From the tank, I see where he drug the chain. I come up on the porch and I look at this chair, and I look at the marks on the crossboards, and I wanted to see if he struggled. Because if he struggled, that means he didn't want to go. He regretted it. I couldn't take the regret, because that meant he was scared then. That meant, he didn't want to die. That meant,
He made a bad decision that he couldn't get out of.
He made a bad decision. I looked down, I saw a half-smoked cigarette. And I saw this chair. The chain on the boards was just one imprint. It wasn't scrapes, So he went straight down, he sat there. He just
let it happen.
And I thought about, and don't take this as disrespect, but I thought about how brave you have to be to commit to do something like that, and I thought about it, man, and I said, why, why would he do that? And he said he know that I'm gonna be here to take care of his kids. We're gonna take care of his kids. He trusts that. My dad came and he showed me a picture. And he had his hat on. He had his hat on. He smoked a cigarette. His feet, the chair was his feet hung lower than the chair did. So he could have stepped back. He could have stepped back up. But he chose to do it. And when I say he chose, that gave me a sense of, I'm not going to say peace, you know, but it gave me more of a confirmation. Closure. He was speaking to me, the cigarette, the cap on his head. To me, it was closure, you know. The sad thing was, you know, and that's the one thing that I do hold myself responsible. You know, I'm a therapist. I understand grief. I understand the self-blame and coulda, woulda, shouldas. But what I do hold myself accountable for was that I was studying to be a therapist. And all the signs was there. But I said black people don't commit suicide. Nobody in our family ever committed suicide. I ain't got to worry about that. He'll just get drunk and, you know, it'll be all right.
You'll sleep it off.
You know? But all the signs was there. And I ignored them, you know? And I said I made a promise to myself that if I ever know something that can help anybody out, I don't care how it makes me feel, and I don't care how it makes them feel. I'm going to say it, you know? And sometimes, you know, my mask that I wear at work, right, is not the same mask. It's not who I am. But sometimes in certain situations, I have to take my work mask off and show coworkers who I really am. You know, whether that's me contacting my supervisor that was just my coworker and asked him, how you doing? Are you doing a good job, bro? I said, I'm not been a butt kisser or nothing, man, but you know, sometimes other men need to hear that other men are proud of them. You know, you're doing a good job. And I think about my brother, and I also think, just like in a sense that I think about my son, you know, how did he see me? Did he see me as this invincible person? You know, the guy that was always structured and committed to his goal. And, you know, my brother's 16, 17 years old, took care of me while I was going through college. My mom was sent to prison my sophomore year. One time I turned to want to sell drugs. And first of all, I'm horrible with math. You know, secondly, measuring anything was not my forte. But my brothers wouldn't let me do it. Whatever I needed, they made sure I had it, you know? And it's like I must have made myself look 10 foot tall to my brother for him to think that what he was dealing with, I had never dealt with before. Like, the honest truth was, you know, I had drunk. When my grandma passed away, I had beat a guy within an inch of his life. And the closer that he got to the end of his life, the less I cared. And that scared me. I was also a federal employee at the time, sitting in the office with a tie on with bloody knuckles. And I've been through the mindset of suicide a million times because I felt like I was alone. You know, my brothers always had their brother. You know, my brothers born on the same day, a year apart.
Oh wow, that's
so my brothers that's still here never had a birthday without my brother. You know, and sometimes I wish if I had just been honest with them and showed them that I'm not this perfect being, you know, that they think I am, you know, how much more of a connection we could have had. I got a coworker named it's Chris Williams. And when I started Ironhead, the Ironhead Youth Development Program in 2016, and, you know, I started the program in Gina. And it was cool. he took the program to Winfield. He got the keys to the city. It's literally, they gave him awards and all kinds of stuff, bro. And I just noticed how he was around the kids. He was real. He was authentic. Where I was put a mask on again, And I asked myself, what's the difference between me and him? And I said, he's genuine. He's authentic. He's not trying to portray himself as perfect,
Letting people see his scars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I went back to school, to get my master's. And it took me a while to want to come back around to do Ironhead. But at this time, bro, it was like, I want to show them exactly who I am, how I am,
Yeah.
Because maybe that'll open other pathways for people to feel open to talk to me about things, I can't talk to him because he's this, same thing with my son. I can't talk to him because he's that, not knowing that I've been through everything he's gone through, if not more.
Or if you haven't, you want to experience that with him so that he's not alone.
Exactly. So my brother passed, and even though I'm a therapist, for some reason, I didn't believe in I believed in it, but I didn't believe in it. Emotions and breaking down and stuff like that, because I've always been in control of mostly of what I did. And I remember pulling up to the parking lot one day after working out, and I just started breathing erratically. I'm like, what's going on? Breathing like I'm having an asthma attack. And the tears rolling down my eyes. And I don't know what's going on. Like I'm dumbfounded, And the first thing I thought was to call my coworker Dupree. Dupree lost a brother. And he had been pretty much mentoring me and coaching me through the situation. And I called him, and I couldn't even say nothing. He just heard me breathing. And he said, breathe, man, just breathe. Just breathe. And I let out this loud, just quail, and he said, just breathe. And he sat on the phone and he cried with me, And when I was able to calm down or whatever, I went on to the house. But my emotions, it took that type of trauma to make me conscious of emotions and give them more respect than I had prior. Because I didn't respect emotions, I could feel one thing but still act a certain way, But my emotions led to me failing my first internship. I failed it and got fired. I made my first, B. I finished with a 3.9, but I made my first B in there. That freaked me out. It was just, I just couldn't pull it together. And about a couple of months later, another cousin committed suicide. And then a week after he committed suicide, I didn't want to go see my best friend. Like when I was 15, I was jumped by a group of men in high school. And, that was the first guy. I almost ended him. I choked him unconscious. And this guy comes and grabs me, pulls me out of the crowd. He says, "You're going to kill him." And that was my best friend. That was one of my best friends. His name was Kendrick Short. And Kendrick
saved your life.
Kendrick Short, that was his baby brother that committed suicide. And a week later, Kendrick died from a brain aneurysm. And in my adult life, it's only been a few times that I thought about ending it, But I walked outside of my department door and I looked up at the sky, and it felt like the sky was so beautiful, but it felt like it was laughing at me. like all this chaos is going on in your life, but still a beautiful day, you know? And I said, man, this ain't worth living. If life is tragedy, chaos, and madness all the time, it's like life's got to be a curse, you know? And that was the lowest point, I think, of my adult life, you know? I was like, you know, it's like I'm only living to hurt, you know? So at that time, I started back doing MMA. And the only reason I came back to MMA because I wanted to take my family down the journey of MMA with me. First time I started MMA, I kept it a secret. Like, I didn't tell nobody because I didn't want anybody to see me lose, you know?
Yeah.
I'm the superhero. I don't lose, you know? I'm the big brother. I'm the one that they tell people about. So I didn't even tell them I was cage fighting until I was about a year and a half in, you know? And when mom found out, you know, I go to visit her in prison, she didn't like it, you know? So I said, you know what? I'm gonna bring the family together and we're gonna experience this together. And my first fight came after he passed, you know, but my family was there and they got to experience it with me. I did some experiments with emotions. Like I remember one time I said, man, when I go to train, when things get hard, I'm gonna just envision my brother, you know? And that was horrible. That was the dumbest thing I could have ever done, bro. I mean, I'm in the middle of just dominating the guy on the mat, and then I think about my brother start crying.
Well, you thought you were going to get some anger you can let out, and it turned into something completely different.
Exactly. And I was like, oh my God, like, emotions are real, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
That anger may only be the surface of all the sadness you were suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And you were thinking, I'm going to get all this anger out. And then you broke through that wall.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man. And it I don't know how to explain it, but therapy helped a lot. You know, a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people think therapy is just, you know, you go and just waste your time. But therapy made me a true believer, and I'm a therapist.
Yeah.
It made me a true believer. You know, I got on medication to help me with my emotions and things like that. And I started stabilizing eventually. But, you know, early on, man, I dealt with some stuff. Like one time, my wife doesn't know this, and this is my first time standing on the mic.
Uh-oh.
I love you, wife. But one time, you know, I got injured, and I was gonna go fight this dude. I forgot this guy's name. I was gonna give him some recognition, but he lived down in Baton Rouge. He was 6'7".
Oh, wee.
And like even online, they matched us up, and everybody said I was gonna win. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, you know. And I ended up getting injured, and like I had to go to Georgia for training, and I was gonna drive back from Georgia and just go straight to the ring, you know. And it was just need. I needed to fight. Like I needed to, you know. And like I said, I got hurt. The fight was canceled. The guy goes and he fights another guy, and they have a war. And I was upset because I felt like that was my pain that I should have been able to endure. You know, I feel like those were my scars that I didn't get. You know, I earned those scars. How did, you know, they get to have this war that I was supposed to have, you know?
Right. And
for some reason, it triggered something, man. And this opportunity came called they call it something brawl or something. But it was like this blood sport thing where you can fight 4 guys in one night. And I was just waiting for the opportunity, you know, and I was excited, you know, and my wife wouldn't let me go. You know, like she didn't want me to go anywhere without her. And I questioned my marriage. Like, you know, like
she wanted to be there for you.
If this puts my marriage at risk, it's so be it. I'm going. I need to fight. I need to go fight because I feel like I don't know. I feel like something was being taken away from me. I felt like, you know, for some reason, pain to me pain to me is like a relief valve.
Helps you feel alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if scars and all this stuff, if you could think of pain and scars to me, it's like, how the sewer have steam coming out of it and stuff like that. That's how my scars and stuff make me feel in regards to pressure build up, And I said, I got to go find that somewhere, And me and my wife got into it. She was like, no. I was like, I don't care. I'm going. And I call that risking my marriage. But there was the one time that I deliberately did something that my wife told me not to do, And man, I packed up that morning and I went down there in 511s, And I get there and we register and I'm looking at all the guys, man. There's one big guy. I wish I remember these guys' names so I can give them credit, man. But all these guys ended up being my friends. But it was this guy. He comes out, man. He's 6'5", no body fat, muscle shirt on, coming through there, just big, man. And I said, I can't wait to punch that dude. And
looks like Zangief off Street Fighter.
Man, I was like, I cannot wait I hope I get to fight that dude, man.
Yeah.
And so we go out there, bro, and I knock out the first two opponents. The first guy had a kick fight. He was a kickboxer, and I knocked him out. And then I fought a guy that was a boxer, but this guy beat the reigning champion in the first round. And I'm sitting there joking with him, like, man, I'm telling you, man, they're gonna mess around, put me with this little young dude, bro, and I was just gonna kick my ass,
Yeah.
And then they put me with the young dude.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, man, are you serious? So I go through the kickboxer, then the boxer, and I knocked the boxer out. And then they didn't have anybody else for me to fight, so they bring the reigning champion back. How? Anyway, so
they didn't want you to win.
The promoter guy, he's cool, man, but I was like, I don't think that was fair.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the guy comes in and me and him brawling, bro. And then all of a sudden, boom, And I'm like, what is that? I spit it out. My tooth comes out. He headbutted me,
Okay.
And, he tells the ref, like, I headbutted him.
Yeah.
And the ref's like, either keep fighting or you got to quit. I'm like, he just said he headbutted me. He just told you he headbutted me. Like, no deduction, no nothing. Yeah. Anyway, so I spit the tooth out and kept fighting. We come out in the second round. He hit me, and I was standing in a weird, awkward stance, and he knocked me down. I was like, God dog it,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I ended up losing. And I had to come home with a missing tooth. And, of course, my wife,
Oh, she's pretty PO'd about that, huh?
She did the worst thing possible. She didn't say anything.
Oh, yeah. When they don't talk to you, it's terrible.
Just standing there with a missing tooth.
Yeah.
Like,
hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
But I say all that to say, man, losing someone in that manner, bro, it changes so much, in your life, in your mind, the roles change. My brother was the uniter, He united both sides of the family. He united everybody, Now we didn't have a uniter.
You had to become that.
I had to become the uniter, Like, I love hanging out with his kids because when I have all six of them together, it's like Coil. It's Coil. This is my brother.
Yeah.
All six of them together, just sitting there talking and just listening to him. That's my brother.
And you probably see so many things different in each one of them that remind you of him.
Yeah. He got the baby girl. She stole his face, And my brother just had a baby, and he didn't just have her. She's like 2 years old, but they spoil her. She's the apple of the bunch or whatever. So she gets away with everything. But I said, you let her hit Anna.
Yeah,
Anna go knock her ass.
Yeah, and there's always a scrapper.
Yeah, but I like to think that they get a dose when they come to me. They get a dose of their father too. Like they'll go a long period of time, and all of a sudden they just gotta be at the house.
Yeah,
and I appreciate that. And I don't take that for granted. Me and my brothers did have a lot of commonalities. We were jokers. We like to laugh. We like to talk noise. He was like the Winsboro version of me. If you met him, he was like the Winsboro version. The one that got stuck in Winsboro, the one that never left Winsboro. He's the Winsboro version of me.
You're a townie.
Yeah. And the thing about it, man, my brother was special, bro. Like, remember, I was in college trying to run my 40. The dude beat me in junior high. He was in junior high and he beat me in the 40.
Oh, wow.
You know, he was just natural, you know. I took him to the gym when he was a freshman in high school, and all the kids, they were working out with, 25 plates on both sides. He's working out with 135. He was like a man child amongst the other kids, and I'm like, this is weird, you know. Like,
you looked up to him so much,
man. He like I was just a hard worker, you know. But my brothers, both of them, gifted animals, you know. Like I said, the one thing I regret is just not showing them the human side of me, you know. I went through a lot of chaos by myself, you know, and I thought that was a good thing. I thought, just like with my son, I was protecting him from harm. But the things that I was protecting him from could have very well connected us and made our relationship stronger if I had known that this mask that I was carrying was doing more harm with my relationship with my loved ones than it was good, you know. So, you know, ever since he's passed, you know, it's been about being authentic, you know, being genuine, who I am, how I operate. And it is not ordinary how I operate, I admit, you know. And that's another hard thing, is understanding that people do not think like you do, you know.
Just like fingerprints.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
Everybody's different. And you got to be able to understand that. And if you want to take it a step further, I almost try to envision what it's like to be them sometimes and how they see things. Because if you can see things more commonly like they would, you know, it takes away from the confusion or the assumption or the guessing, you know. And that could be just a therapy of me. You know, a lot of people ain't got energy and time for that. You know, forget them people. I ain't thinking about it.
Yeah, but you know what? That's how we make difference in people's lives. You know, when we take that extra step, everything you're doing right now has changed so many people. You probably won't see it for years, but those kids you're working with really hard, you know, you probably mean a lot to them. And you may have gotten a lot of those kids out of trouble or places that would have put them in trouble going forward. So, we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. I truly appreciate you being here. Honestly, I'd like to have you back at some point. Amazing guy. I mean, I've known you for years, you know, and I just want to say thank you so much.
Can I say this right before you leave, bro?
Sure, no problem.
The first time I knew Tate would be one of them lifelong friends, and I don't know if you're okay with me telling.
Whatever you like to do.
You know, you was at the same prison visiting your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at you and I said, wow, he works at the same place I work at, from a similar background. And he's not using his upbringing or his experiences as a crutch. You know, he's thriving from it. And I said, if he could do it, why am I not doing it? And then from that point on, I was like, I need to learn who that guy is, you know? And from that point on, I watched the way you walk, watched the way you talk. And I said, he don't look like a person that was a victim. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He looked like a person that took his circumstances by the horns, and made his reality what he wanted it to be. And you've continued to do that ever since. And I said, that's the way I want to walk.
Well, I appreciate that, man. You almost gonna get me crying over here on this episode.
Yeah, you're ugly dude. Don't cry.
Okay, exactly. I'll be honest with you. Life's gonna knock you down, and that's one of the things that I've learned a long time ago is, you know, when God closes a door, He opens a window. You know, and maybe that's not the direction you're supposed to go, but you know, and I'm gonna quote somebody, Kevin Gates. You know what? You may see me fall 100 times, but you ain't never going to see me quit.
100%.
So, you know what I'm saying? So, all right, LJ. Appreciate it, dog.
All right, man.
Thank
Appreciate
y'all.
you having me.
All right. Till next time, I'm Nick Tate.
LJ Taylor.
Thanks, guys.